Hello and welcome to Harvesting Our Wellbeing as Educators. I'm Hugh Fitzmaurice and here with me is Maura O'Higgins. And our guest for today we're delighted to have is Miss Nicola Culloty. And I'm going to introduce Nicola to you in one moment. So we're now entering a phase of a series of conversations around wellbeing and what that means for us as educators and I suppose the practical purposes of wellbeing in our schools. So we're delighted today to have Nicola with us. So I'm just going to let you know about Nicola. So Nicola is a primary educator with 20 years experience and has completed a master's in CBT and is currently practicing as a CBT therapist. Nicola founded Full Circle CBT in 2020 and provides webinar and on-site training to teachers, service providers and agencies. Nicola has facilitated parenting groups and worked closely with parents of children who've experienced trauma in her roles as teacher, therapist, and homeschool liaison person. We're delighted to have Nicola with us today. How are you, Nicola?
Thank you. Thanks, Hugh. Hi, Maura. Thank you.
Hi, Nicola.
So I'm going to hand you over to Maura now for the next part of our conversation for today. Maura?
Thank you, Hugh. Nicola, Hugh and I love John O'Donoghue, and we've shared with you a poem of his, and we'd love you to read it for us.
May all that is unforgiven in you be released. May your fears yield their deepest tranquilities. May all that is unlived in you blossom into a future graced with love.
Thank you. In the spirit of John O'Donoghue's words, unforgiven, fears, tranquilities, blossom, love. How are you?
I'm good. I'm delighted to be here. It's sunny. There is blue skies. Has a big impact on me. I'm noticing after the winter. So yeah, I'm delighted to be here. I love talking about CBT, as Hugh knows from our telephone conversation. Yeah, so I'm really good. Thank you.
CBT, I know what it is. I have trained as a mindfulness teacher, and I'd love you to share with us, what is CBT?
So CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy, and I suppose it doesn't focus on just one area. It focuses on cognitive, behavioral, and looking at therapeutic techniques. So the premise is that our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors, and also our physical symptoms, they're all connected. They can all interact with one another. So when I open my eyes in the morning, my thought, whether it's, a really good thought, a really positive thought, that will have an impact on my behavior for the day. It'll have an impact maybe on my physical symptoms even. And also, on my thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and those physical symptoms. So if I open my eyes in the morning and my first thought is dread and, doom and gloom, then that might have an impact on me. I might, get a pain in my stomach, migraine. It also has an impact on how I behave for the day and how I feel for the day as well. So by looking at each area, we can improve our well-being. We can improve how we're feeling physically even, and also how we're behaving, how we're acting. Are we adding to our thoughts and our behaviors, by what we're doing? So I suppose it looks at physical, thoughts, feelings, behaviors, all linked in together.
As an educator, you were 20 years a primary school teacher.
I can't believe it.
And extraordinary. It's fabulous to have that depth of experience as an educator. Can I ask you, what is it that brought you from being a primary school teacher to where you now are working with CBT and wellbeing? What was that transition like? Why did you make it? And what was your 20 years as an educator like? A lot of questions. Let's break that right down. What was it like to transition from being a primary school teacher into what you do now as a wellbeing facilitator?
I would actually say that CBT is very much focused on psychoeducation. So teaching people about why you're having that thought, why your thought is leading to that behavior, why that's impacting on, you know, your stomach or your head. So actually I find that I'm still a teacher, I'm just in a different domain, if that makes sense. So the psychoeducation is really, really important in CBT. So I feel like I'm still almost in a very similar role, but I'm just facilitating learning in somebody else on how they're feeling, and teaching in a different capacity how they can change their thoughts and lead to more positive behaviors and positive feelings. So that transition has been, in a way, quite, I suppose, easy now that I think about it more. I hadn't thought about it before. But I suppose getting there was, you know, it meant having to go back to college after, you know, quite a few years of not being in college at a different level as well. So master's level was very, very difficult. A lot more research, but, you know, you don't learn anything without a reason, and it has helped me now to be able to research different things, or, you know, look at things in a different way as well. So that has been a positive as well. Next question, I can't remember it.
Well, I suppose in that context, how are you as an educator? Because you're so right, you still are an educator. It's in a different way. How are you as an educator? How are you feeling, maybe?
Yeah, so I probably, you know, I still job share, so I'm still teaching, and I'm teaching in special education. So I'm a very different teacher. I'm a very different person to who I was 20 years ago. I worked as a homeschool community liaison, and one of the things about working as a HCL is that you complete the role over 5 years, and then you go back into the classroom. And during those 5 years, I loved it so much that I kept thinking, I don't want to go back into the classroom. I love working with the parents and being in the homes. But I can see now, having come out of it, the benefits of me going back into the classroom. And where I would have taught with, say, John before, now I'm teaching him knowing an awful lot more about where John is and where John has come from. And that's invaluable. It's absolutely invaluable. I think that as teachers, we're far more aware of, I read this on LinkedIn actually, it was Maslow before Bloom. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Those needs that we have, those basic needs and psychological needs that lead us to realize our potential. That comes before, you know, Bloom's taxonomy of learning, how I'm teaching. I would have been focused on Bloom. I'm holding my hand up and saying it was Bloom all the way when I started teaching. It was grammar and verbs, and, you know, you have to put your full stop in. And I didn't see I don't know that I knew about Maslow. I'm sure I learned it in Mary I, but I didn't remember it. But now I'm so much more focused on where the child is, where they need to be to learn, and what comes before the learning process. So I'm very different.
That's very interesting, Nicola. One of the challenges I would see with our education system is that your story is telling me that you knew to move away, to retrain, and to be able to go back. Then the system is lucky to have you to go back in, focusing on the relationship with the person you're engaging with. The system doesn't easily allow that, and that is a real pity. And I actually think that young people are suffering because of that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that relationship-based practice is where we need to be. It's absolutely, in terms of working with parents, working with each other in the staff room, in the school, with principals, with management, it's relationship-based practice. Everything is based on our relationships. Again, another, you know, core psychological need that we have is connection with people and how we connect with people. I don't think it allows for it. I think that communication-wise, we have, I'm going to say, been really, really let down. The communication, you know, between, you know, schools and departments and parents, and there's something definitely amiss. That relationship-based practice is not that foundation that we need, you know, to hold up our schools and our education system. Everything should be built on it. And all the research is there. And that's why I find it so strange. All the research is there to show that, you know, if you want somebody to learn, if you want somebody to like you, if you want somebody to feel comfortable with you, it's based on your relationships. So that's where we need, you know, that practice for our, from everywhere, every link, from the department to teachers, from the department to parents, from us to the department. It has to be all around communication and relationships. And I think that it doesn't allow for it always, unless you have people in management who are focused on the importance of relationships and putting the child and their needs, and the parent and their needs, and the teacher and their needs at the core, then at the very, very center of education. It has to be all those things. And I don't think we have that always.
Sorry, Maura, Nicola, can I just cover, it's fascinating when you're saying what you're saying, Nicola. I was just thinking when you're saying about relationships, right? And I'm just thinking we're going back into hopefully full schools now, fingers crossed, very soon. And principals, particularly principals, have had to deal with a lot, the stop-start, as have teachers and parents and kids. But I'm just looking from the point of view of principals. And there was a phrase I saw recently was, who am I being while I'm doing? Who am I being while I'm doing? And I'm just, when you're saying about relationships, I'm thinking about the relationship we have with ourselves, the relationship then you have with the staff, and then with the kids. And when it comes to principals and CBT, and the busyness of that role and the complexity of the role, I'm just thinking your thoughts when it comes to a principal and how to help alleviate that, or what, I suppose it comes with teachers as well, but what kind of ideas would they have around that to help, maybe, because it's so busy, you know what I mean, for them, and to kind of channel their thoughts or as such.
And it's really, I suppose, ironic is probably the word, maybe, or paradox, that there's this recovery paradox, which is basically the more demanding and challenging your job is, the more you are in need of recovery. But because your resources will run down, but you're also less likely to engage in recovery activities because you're just, it's from the cortisol being released in your body from the stress, and it is the thoughts being in your mind all the time. So recovery is key for all of us at the moment, and mentally detaching. Actually, mentally detaching, we haven't been able to mentally detach because, you know, before we worked in schools where we could physically detach, so we could, you know, walk out the gate and we might leave it there. It was like almost like a symbol of leaving it there. We bring it with us, but at least we physically, but now we're here and we've offices at home, or we've kitchen tables with laptops on it, and we have calls in the evening, and we might have, you know, department announcements at 5 o'clock on Friday evening. Yes, so it's hard then, isn't it, to mentally detach? But mentally detaching is your best predictor of next day recovery. So how I am going into school the next morning is based on how well I was able to mentally detach. And mentally detaching takes practice, and it's not a skill that, you know, we can say, okay, I'm going to mentally detach now, I'm going to switch off, and the thought will come in, or I'll just check one more email, or better answer it, it's an 01 number, it might be HSE, you know. So it's hard to, but we have to, you know, we can do things to mentally detach. And sometimes we can do things that are negative for recovery, you know, talking in length about things after work. Yes, we can talk, but we can limit it. Sometimes, you know, if I have somebody coming to me who is stressed about work, I'm giving them a timer and I'm saying, you have 5 minutes to talk.
Yeah.
in the evening with your partner about work, and that's it, 5 minutes. Using the phone, checking and sending work emails, and sometimes we need to have behaviors. So CBT is very much focused on neuroplasticity and neurogenesis, which is forming new pathways in the brain, and then neuroplasticity meaning changing the pathways that are there, especially if they're having an impact on how I'm feeling. If I want to change the pathways in my brain, then I need to set up behaviors. What I do, I lock my office door. That to me is now my signal that you've locked the door. It's not enough for me to close the door, Hugh. I'm back in there 5 minutes later, making sure that I've sent that email and I haven't mentally detached. Now I have a behavior, so I turn the key and then I have a thought as well. So the cognition is, I'm finished work, what am I going to do next? But by saying that and by doing it every day, I strengthen that pathway in the brain telling me that I have finished. Good sleep is so important. We know that. Physical exercise is so important. But also, again, because I'm CBT orientated, it's all about those thoughts. Recognizing that my thought is having an impact on my behavior. Maybe I have, a false belief that if I don't check in and don't send this email, then, I'm not a good principal, I'm not a good teacher. However, if I can say, no, I'm actually going to switch off for my benefit, and so that I'm in a better place the next morning going into school, then that's for everybody's benefit. Changing my thought process, looking at my thoughts. I have 3 C's that I use: catch, challenge, and change. So I catch the thought, I challenge the thought, check whether it's, helpful, whether it's unhelpful, and then I change the thought to a more realistic thought. It's not always about being positive. I'm the best principal in the world. I'm the best teacher in the world. We don't have to go down, well, you can absolutely do that. It's more helpful than telling yourself you're terrible. But it is about changing that thought to a realistic one. I'm doing this with the best of intentions and I'm switching off.
Yeah, Nicola, it's very, very interesting hearing you speak, because what you're saying is what we need. Can I ask you this? What I have learned from my meditation practice, let me roll back a bit. I was watching my cousin's funeral on a screen yesterday, and I was struck by something the priest said. He said that the door in churches in Ireland into the church tend to be very big, and it's as if we were 20 feet tall and we were being accommodated. But he said it's not that. The door is a symbol of crossing into that sacred space. And I think for me, what resonates with me about what you said is that you're looking to help educators to create boundaries and rituals around when they are working and when they're not working, particularly in this new space we're in. And I'm really struck about that idea of turning the key in the door, the ritual, the threshold, the crossing over. Can I ask you, in my meditation practice, it was only through confronting, Hugh uses this word, confronting my own self-care and my well-being, confronting my emptiness almost, by practicing being in stillness, that I really, really met myself. And it has what has helped me to be a better educator. Can I ask you, what is it that has brought you to that place where you have transitioned into what you now know is the way to be?
I think there's been quite a few steps to it. The first step being, and I know this was one of the first questions, but I was the teacher who walked out the gate in the evening, and I still hold my chest. My body remembers, my mind remembers, with the pain in her chest. I would sit into the car, I would drive home, and that chest pain would not leave me at all. And it got really bad one day, and I actually got my mother to bring me to the doctor because I was having a heart attack, and you can't drive if you're having a heart attack. So I went to the doctor and he handed me a letter. And I was like on my way into A&E, I thought. And when I opened it, it was the name of a CBT therapist. And I thought, and I did think at the very beginning, how dare you, doctor? I am quite clearly having a heart attack. 15 years on, quite clearly I wasn't having a heart attack. And yeah, sure, it was the mind-body link, it was the stress, it was the thoughts, it was the sending those signals from my thoughts to my behaviours, worrying about school, worrying about parents coming in, or what my principal would say, who was a lovely man and never said a word to me, but it was always the worry and a switched on fight or flight system. So I went to CBT and I talked the talk and walked the walk, and I did my homework, changed those thought patterns and behaviours, and then I suppose noticed the difference and the change it was having on me and on my life. And then I worked as I said, HSCL, a homeschool in a disadvantaged areas, working with parents in particular. And it really struck me about the mental health needs, recognizing that relationship building that I was doing, and also recognizing how alike we are all as humans, so whether I'm going into a home and a mom can't get her child out to school, I was saying, I was the same this morning with my child. Like we have, as humans, we have such similarities as well as differences. So that led me then to, do my course in counselling, and then I moved on to the CBT. But as you were asking this question, I was smiling, Maura, because I was thinking of a webinar that I wrote recently on finding a balance. And as I was writing it and researching it, and working 10-hour days as I was researching a webinar called Finding a Balance, I realised that I was not finding a balance myself. And I absolutely had to, I had to walk the walk again and talk the talk again. I had to find a way to really, really do this. And, reading about the research and reading about how, it has an impact on you, and all those techniques like locking the door and saying patterns, I had to do that as well. And that recovery paradox really, really struck me, that I'm here, I'm, really working hard, setting up Full Circle. I want it to be amazing and to reach so many people, and make a real go of it. But yet I have to mind me, or I'm not going to be good to anybody. So I have to do these techniques myself.
And you know what, Nicola, I'm looking at John O'Donoghue's words here, and what you've actually spoken about is you as an educator have brought what John O'Donoghue speaks about into your work. And I think the beauty going forward will be in bringing the education system into that same realm. Can I ask you, Hugh, did you want to, have you a burning question?
I have a burning question. I probably have about 20 of them, but I'll ask one. It's because it's very much, it strikes me, Nicola, that they're very much bringing back the humanity into education, and the relationship we have with ourselves, and that's a priority in the busyness, because we hear there's a language around schools around busyness often, and that ability to slow down and recognize our thoughts and say, well, we've a choice now, what are we going to do about this? And then the relationship we have with colleagues and the relationship we have with students, which is so important because that's the future. You know what I mean? And particularly now, I suppose COVID has been a very challenging time, but it's also been a time for reflection. As educators, a real time for reflection. And we're going into our last term, and we're going into hopefully full schools. But with that, there will be anxieties. Hello, Nicola?
Sorry, I don't know what happened to the internet there.
You're okay, no problem. Good to have you back with us. So I was just saying that we're going into our last term, and there will be certain anxieties and worries that educators will have. Mightn't say it, but they will have it. You know, around I haven't been vaccinated. I'm going into a classroom. I'm going home. I have my parent living with me. Different things like that, and kids about, you know. So there's an anxiety around COVID. There's going into full classrooms, which is a new normal because we've been online for so long. And then there's principals having to negotiate all this. So I'm just thinking from the point of view of CBT and all the wonderful wisdom you've told us, what if there was going to be like one or two nuggets of wisdom that you're giving educators going into this last this phase, the next from now till the summer, what would they be, I suppose? What kind of wisdom would you say to educators aligned with CBT and the science that you've been telling us?
Yeah,
no pressure, Nicola.
No pressure, no pressure.
No pressure whatsoever. I think that it's looking at what's within my control. What can I control here, and what is outside of my control? And if there is something that is outside of my control, then I have to focus and keep my brain and my thoughts and my behaviors on what is within my circle of control. When those thoughts go to the worst case scenario, I need to bring myself back to being present. I need to stop the time traveling. You know, it's not going to bring me any closer to the event, but I need to be present. I suppose doing lots of what's important to us. We know that research shows us that when we live a life that is in line with our values, in line with mastery, so, you know, things that I want to do for me, focusing on connection, all those things are really important, and they keep me here, and they keep me, you know, they keep my mind off the Friday evening announcements or moving down a vaccination list, or, you know, it's what I can, psychological flexibility, isn't it? It's keeping me within my circle of what I can control. Those difficult thoughts that I'm having are generally going to be based around fear. They're generally going to be based around anxiety about the future. And those thoughts set off those reactions within my brain that tell me, like when I was in a cave, that there's a bear behind me, but there is no bear. So if I can unhook myself from that difficult thought and say, is that helpful? Is it real? Is it based on fact? So as I sit here and just catch that thought and say, is that true? Is that helpful? No, it's not. Then I need to leave it there, redirect my attention on something I want to do, on, you know, going out for a walk, and it's not rocket science, you know, and I'm not saying that in a patronizing way. The research shows us that walking and mastery and keeping in line with, you know, connections and values, the research is there to show us that it isn't rocket science. There is no new technique. It's about looking at my thoughts, seeing if they're helpful. If they're not, then changing them to a helpful thought that's going to benefit me. And being in that present moment as well, being here and saying, I'm here now, I'm not back at school yet. So no matter how hard you try, I'm not going to go to the 12th of April, because at the moment, it's the 2nd. It is, I had to double check my phone. It's the 2nd, and I'm here now. I'm not on the 12th. So bringing myself back, and those behaviors as well. One of the best techniques, and research shows this, for low mood, depression, is actually behavior activation. So behavior activation is when I have low mood, I don't want to do anything. When I do nothing, I feel worse. So actually, just do it. Nike have that tagline for a reason, just do it. Because I'm not going to get that that motivation to do something. It's the action that causes the emotion. So me going for the walk makes me feel better. Me meeting up with a friend, you know, to jump on a trampoline or to do something to release endorphins, that's what makes me feel better. So looking at my thoughts, looking at my behaviors, and improving then how I'm feeling.
Great, Nicola, thank you so much. And really what you're fundamentally saying is be in the present with all of that. Can you read for us John O'Donoghue's poem again?
I can. May all that is unforgiven in you be released. May your fears yield their deepest tranquillities. May all that is unlived in you blossom into a future graced with love.
I think Circle CBT and you embody that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm fully energized now, Nicola, and I'm already looking forward to listening back to this with all the wisdom and the golden nuggets. And I'm ready for the 12th now after that. So even though
it's still the second.
Yes, that's what I was going to go back. Even though I'm in the present moment right now, as you said there, I'm connecting with that, and just that idea of the importance and the value, as you said, of connecting with ourselves and the common sense of when we're feeling often overwhelmed to go for that walk, make that space. I think it's making that space for what is important. You know, particularly when we're in a practice that so much involves people all the time. So just invaluable what you said. And as I said, it's bringing back that Circle CBT and Nicola Culloty are bringing back the humanity and the connectedness and relationships in education and how important that is. And we're really privileged for your time and your expertise. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening. Thank you.
Thank you.